The rain-slicked windshield blurred the Seattle skyline as I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white against the leather. Mason's voice crackled through the phone speaker, urgent and laced with that trademark grin I could hear even over the static. "Wyatt, man, I owe you big. Dawson's turning 18 next week, and I can't bail on this Alaska gig. It's the break I've been chasing for years." I swallowed hard, the wipers slapping rhythmically like a heartbeat I couldn't ignore. "Yeah, sure. What's the worst that could happen? Babysitting a kid in your lakeside cabin sounds like a vacation." But as I pulled into the gravel driveway of Haven Point Retreat, the cabin's weathered cedar siding glowing under the porch light, I saw him, Dawson Reed, all lanky limbs and defiant posture, hauling a duffel bag from the truck, his green eyes flashing with a storm I never saw coming. That first evening, the air hung thick with the scent of pine and impending dusk, the kind of Pacific Northwest twilight that wraps around you like a secret. Mason clapped me on the back before piling into his Jeep, his laugh booming over the engine's rumble. "He's a handful, fresh out of high school, full of that angsty fire. Just keep him out of trouble till I get back in September. Feed him, maybe take him fishing. You'll be fine. You're the responsible one." Responsible. The word tasted like ash in my mouth as I waved him off, the taillights fading down the winding road toward I-5. At 28, I'd built a life on that label. Freelance graphic designer by day, weekend hikes to clear the fog from my head, and a string of half-hearted dates that never stuck because no one ever saw past the steady guy with the easy smile. Seattle suited me. Its gray skies mirroring the quiet ache I'd carried since college, when a bad breakup with a guy who'd ghosted me after one too many straight curiosity experiments left me swearing off vulnerability. Dawson slammed the screen door behind him, dropping his bag in the foyer with a thud that echoed through the open-plan living room. The cabin was all mason. Exposed beams, a stone fireplace stacked with cordwood, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Washington, where the water lapped lazily against the private dock. It was the kind of place that screamed escape, but tonight it felt like a cage. "So, you're the warden?" Dawson's voice cut through the quiet, laced with sarcasm that didn't quite hide the tremor beneath. He was shorter than his brother by a few inches, maybe 5'10", with the same Reed jawline but softer, more boyish edges. Sun-kissed blonde hair falling in waves over his forehead, freckles dusting his nose from too many afternoons on the water. At 18, he was all kinetic energy, dressed in ripped cargo shorts and a faded Sounders jersey that hung loose on his wiry frame. I forced a chuckle, rubbing the back of my neck. More like the pizza delivery guy with benefits. "Hungry?" He eyed me warily, like I was some intruder in his brother's domain, then shrugged and flopped onto the leather sectional. "Whatever, as long as it's not Mason's kale smoothies." We ordered from a hole-in-the-wall joint in Bellevue, pepperoni loaded, extra cheese, and ate in silence at first, the TV flickering with some mindless action flick neither of us cared about. But as the slices disappeared, so did the ice. Dawson talked fast, words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back for months. How high school in Maple Creek had been a pressure cooker of fake friends and stricter teachers. How he was ditching community college for a gap year to figure shit out. His laugh was sharp, infectious, cutting through the rain pattering on the roof. "You ever feel like you're just waiting?" he asked suddenly, mid-bite, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my pulse stutter. I paused, fork hovering over the last crust. "Waiting for what?" He leaned forward, elbows on knees, the firelight casting shadows across his face. "For something real. Not this scripted bullshit everyone feeds you." The room shrank then, the space between us charged with something unnamed. I mumbled something about adulting being overrated and cleared the plates, but as I washed up at the sink, staring out at the dark lake, I felt it. A pull subtle as a current, drawing me toward the kid my best friend had trusted me to watch. Little did I know that current would drag us both under. By the third day, the rain had broken, giving way to that rare Seattle blue sky stretch that makes you believe in second chances. I woke to the smell of coffee brewing, strong, black, the way Mason taught us both in our college dorm days, and found Dawson already out on the deck, sketchpad in lap, charcoal smudging his fingers as he captured the mist rising off the water. "Morning, Picasso," I said, sliding the door open. He didn't look up, but a half-smile tugged at his lips. "Figured you'd sleep till noon." Jet lag from your city life. Ha! Try deadline hangover. I poured a mug and joined him, settling into the Adirondack chair with a creak. The lake stretched out like a mirror, reflecting the evergreens and distant Olympics, a world away from my cramped queen and apartment. We fell into an easy rhythm that morning, a run along the wooded trail behind the cabin, my steady pace matching his eager strides. Dawson was a natural, light on his feet, breath even as we crested the hill overlooking the valley. Sweat beaded on his temple, and when he stripped off his shirt to tie it around his waist, I caught myself staring at the lean muscles of his back, the way the sun gilded his skin. Guilt twisted in my gut. He was Mason's little brother, for Christ's sake. Off limits. Back home, we grilled salmon on the deck, wild-caught from the market in Fremont, and cracked open a six-pack of IPAs. Dawson loosened up with the buzz, stories spilling out like confessions. He wanted to be an artist, not some desk jockey like half the kids from his graduating class. Dad would have hated that, he said, voice dropping. Their old man had passed 2 years back, a heart attack during a fishing trip in Alaska, leaving Mason to play both roles. Mom was remarried now, off in Portland with a guy who collected vintage guitars. Mason's the golden boy, Dawson continued, poking at the fire we'd lit against the evening chill. Always has been. Me? I'm the screw-up who questions everything. I shifted closer, the warmth of the flames mirroring the one building in my chest. Questioning's not a flaw, it's how you find your way. His gaze met mine, green eyes searching, vulnerable in the fireglow. Yeah? And what's your way look like, Wyatt? You seem solid. Like nothing rattles you. If only he knew. I thought of the nights I'd lain awake in my apartment, scrolling through Grindr profiles only to delete the app before dawn, terrified of that raw exposure again. Solid's just a mask. I admitted, voice low. Sometimes it cracks. That night, as thunder rumbled in the distance, we ended up inside, binging old episodes of the OC on Mason's ancient DVD player. Dawson's pick, a nostalgic dive into California summers we'd both envied as kids. He curled up on the couch, knees to chest, laughing at Seth Cohen's awkward charm. When his head lolled onto my shoulder during a quiet scene, I froze, heart hammering. His hair tickled my neck, warm breath steady against my arm. I should have moved. Instead, I let the episode play on, the weight of him anchoring me to the moment. By week's end, the cabin felt less like a temporary gig and more like home. We kayaked the lake at sunrise, Dawson paddling with wild abandon, splashing me until we both collapsed in laughter on the shore. Evenings blurred into stargazing from the dock, his voice weaving tales of constellations he'd made up on the spot. Orion as a heartbroken sailor, Cassiopeia as the girl who got away. Each story peeled back another layer, revealing the boy beneath the bravado. Scared of disappointing Mason, terrified of a world that might not make room for who he really was. I didn't press. But one humid afternoon, as we hiked to Hidden Falls, a cascade tucked in the Cascades foothills, Dawson stopped at the trail's edge, chest heaving. Wyatt, there's something I need to say. The words hung, heavy as the mist from the water. My throat tightened. I'm listening. He turned, face flushed, eyes fierce. I'm gay, have been forever, but saying it out loud? It's like jumping without knowing if there's water below. The falls roared behind him, but all I heard was my own pulse. In that instant, the line I'd drawn in the sand blurred, and I stepped across it. Then jump with me? I whispered, pulling him into a hug that started as comfort and ignited into something deeper. His body trembled against mine, and as our lips met, tentative, then desperate, the summer stretched before us like an uncharted map, promising both paradise and peril. The kiss lingered in the air between us like smoke from a dying fire, sweet and acrid all at once. Dawson's hands fisted in my shirt, pulling me closer as the falls thundered approval. But when we broke apart, his eyes were wide, a mix of exhilaration and fear swirling in their depths. Shit, Wyatt, that was real, I finished, my voice rough, thumb brushing his cheek where a flush bloomed. We didn't speak after that, just gathered our packs and hiked back in charged silence, the trail's gravel crunching underfoot like unspoken questions. By the time we reached the cabin, dusk had fallen, fireflies winking along the lakeshore like conspirators. That night, we cooked pasta, simple, garlicky, with basil from Mason's neglected herb garden, and ate on the deck under strings of Edison bulbs. Dawson was quieter, picking at his plate, but when he looked up, his smile was tentative, blooming. Thanks for not freaking out. I reached across the table, lacing my fingers with his. Freaking out's for amateurs. Besides, you're not the only one who's been hiding. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? The words stuck, but the wine loosened them. I told him about college, about Jordan, the brooding art major who'd whispered promises in the dark of frat house basements, only to vanish when labels got too real. How I'd buried that hurt under layers of straight-passing friendships and safe, solitary nights. Mason knows I'm bi, I said finally, the admission feeling like shedding skin. But even with him, it's surface. Never this. Dawson squeezed my hand, his touch electric. This feels like starting over. We made love that night for the first time, slow and exploratory in the king bed Mason had jokingly called the guest throne. The sheets tangled around us, bodies mapping unfamiliar territory with reverent hands and hushed breaths. Dawson's skin was fever-hot, his gasps a symphony against my neck, and in the afterglow, as rain pattered the roof again, he traced patterns on my chest, the compass tattoo that pointed nowhere but here. July unfurled like a fever dream. Mornings were ours. Coffee on the porch, then drives into Seattle for farmers markets in Pike Place, where we'd steal bites of salmon jerky and kisses in the shadow of the public market sign. Afternoons bled into lazy afternoons by the lake. Dawson sketching me as I swam, water sluicing off my shoulders, his pencil strokes capturing not just form but the quiet hunger in my eyes. But cracks formed, subtle at first. A voicemail from Mason mid-month, casual check-in. How's the kid holding up? Tell him to call Mom. She's nagging me about grandkids already. Laughter in his voice. Oblivious. Dawson stiffened beside me on the couch. Phone clutched too tight. He doesn't know, he murmured later, curled against me. About me. Or us. The guilt gnawed. I was the adult here, the one Mason trusted. Yet every stolen glance, every brush of thighs under the dinner table, pulled me deeper. We argued about it one sticky evening after a bonfire on the beach. Sparks flying as words did. What if he finds out? Dawson snapped, voice cracking. You'll choose him. Blood over. Whatever this is. I grabbed his wrist, pulling him close. This isn't whatever. You're not a phase. But doubt lingered, a shadow in his eyes. The turning point came on the 4th. Fireworks over the lake, the sky exploding in reds and golds. We watched from a blanket on the dock, bodies pressed close, his head on my lap. As the finale boomed, Dawson turned, eyes shimmering. I love you, Wyatt, terrifying as that is. My heart seized. I love you too. The words were a vow, sealing us against the world. But as the echoes faded, my phone buzzed. Mason, texting a photo from Anchorage. Miss you guys. Be good. The lie tasted bitter. Little did I know, the truth was already en route, barreling toward us like a storm front no dock could weather. August arrived with a vengeance, heat waves shimmering off the asphalt as we escaped the cabin for a road trip down the coast. Highway 101 twisting through Olympic National Park, windows down, indie folk crooning from the speakers. Dawson drove the old Subaru Mason had lent us, his profile sharp against the emerald forests, one hand on the wheel, the other intertwined with mine. We'd packed light. Swimsuits, a cooler of craft beers, and that electric undercurrent that turned every gas station stop into foreplay. Fingers lingering on belt loops, lips brushing in the rearview. Ho Rainforest was our first detour, the moss-draped trees closing around us like a cathedral. We wandered the hall of Moss's Trail, Dawson's laughter echoing as he spun me under a fern canopy, pulling me into a kiss that tasted of salt and pine. This is us, he whispered, forehead to mine. Untamed. But untamed things have teeth. Back at the cabin that weekend, Dawson got a call from his mom. Tearful, probing about his summer plans. He paced the kitchen, phone pressed to ear, voice strained. Yeah, Ma, I'm fine. Wyatt's keeping me in line. A pause, then her voice carrying. That Harlan boy? Mason's friend? Be careful, sweetie. Men like that, they break things. He hung up, slamming the cordless back into its cradle. I reached for him, but he shrugged me off. She means well, but fuck. It's like she senses it. Senses what? I pressed, though I knew that I'm not like Mason, that I'm wrong. His voice broke, and he sank to the floor, back against cabinets. I knelt beside him, arms wrapping around the boy who was no longer a boy in my eyes but a man unraveling. We cried then, him for the family fracture he'd always feared, me for the mirror it held to my own buried shame. That night, we made love with a desperation that bordered on violence, bodies colliding as if to outrun the dawn. The idol shattered mid-month. Mason announced an early return. Some deal gone south in Alaska, needing to regroup. 2 weeks tops, he Skyped, face grizzled from beard growth, eyes tired but bright. Can't wait to crash your party, WY. How's Dawson? He burned the place down yet? Dawson hovered off-screen, forcing a grin. Nah, bro. Just teaching Wyatt how to live a little. The call ended, and the air thickened. We tiptoed around it at first. More hikes. A weekend in Port Townsend with ferry rides and salted caramel ice cream. But the countdown loomed. One evening, as we roasted marshmallows over the fire pit, Dawson voiced the unspoken. When he gets back, what happens to us? I stared into the flames, the sweet char masking the burn in my throat. We tell him, together, but fear coiled in my gut. Mason and I went back to Pee Wee League days, sandlot baseball in Maple Creek, shared secrets over stolen beers at 16. He'd been my rock through Dad's cancer, the one who pulled me from the edge after Jordan. Betraying that felt like treason. The storm broke on a Tuesday, unannounced. I'd stepped out for groceries in Bellevue, leaving Dawson to his sketches. My phone rang as I bagged heirloom tomatoes. Mason, voice edged with panic. Wyatt, get home. Now. Dawson's. He's gone off the rails. Heart in throat. I floored it back, tires screeching into the drive. The cabin door hung open, and inside, chaos. Overturned chair, Dawson's sketchpad splayed on the floor, pages torn and scattered like confetti from a funeral. Mason stood in the kitchen, fists clenched, face a mask of fury. What the hell happened? Before I could answer, Dawson burst from the bedroom, eyes wild, a duffel half-zipped at his feet. You don't get it, Mason. You never have. Mason whirled. I come home early to surprise you and find you trashed? And Wyatt. Jesus, man, you look like you haven't slept. The truth erupted then, raw and jagged. Dawson shoved his phone at Mason. A string of texts, mine, the ones I'd sent from the road. Miss your laugh already. Can't wait to hold you. Mason's face drained of color, eyes flicking between us. This, you're fucking around with my brother. It's not fucking around. I shot back, stepping forward. It's love. The word hung, detonating the room. Mason's fist connected with the wall, plaster cracking. Love? You? The guy who swore off anything real after that prick in college? And you, my kid brother, who I trusted you with. Dawson recoiled, tears streaking. You trusted him to babysit, not to see me. The real me. Mason's gaze hardened, betrayal etching lines around his mouth. Get out, both of you. I need space. Dawson grabbed his bag, storming past me into the rain. I followed, calling his name, but he peeled out in the Subaru, headlights slicing the downpour. Mason slumped against the counter, head in hands. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was scared. I whispered, the admission hollow. Of losing you both. He looked up, eyes shattered. You already have. The days blurred into a gray haze after that. Seattle's autumn teas arriving early with relentless drizzle that mirrored the ache in my chest. I crashed at my apartment in Queen and, the one bedroom with its exposed brick walls and view of the Space Needle now feeling like a tomb. Work stalled. Client logos blurring on my screen as I refreshed Dawson's socials. Silent since the blowout. Mason went radio silent too. His texts unread, voicemails piling up like unanswered prayers. We need to talk. Please. I drove to the cabin that first weekend, rain sheeting the windshield, but the driveway was empty, for sale signs staked crooked in the yard. Mason's hasty retreat, liquidating the family anchor. Haven Point Retreat, the listing read, Prime Lakeside Escape. Escape. The irony burned. Dawson surfaced on a Thursday, a hesitant knock at my door pulling me from a half-eaten burrito on the couch. He stood there, soaked from the storm, duffel slung over shoulder, eyes hollowed by whatever motel purgatory he'd haunted. "Can I come in?" I pulled him inside without a word, the door clicking shut like a seal on our wreckage. We collapsed onto the bed, clothes shedding in a tangle of need and despair, bodies seeking solace where words failed. Afterward, tangled in sheets, he traced my tattoo again, voice muffled against my skin. "I went to Portland, stayed with a friend from art camp. Mom, she knows now," screamed at first, then hugged me till I couldn't breathe. "And Mason," Dawson's sigh was a fracture. Texted him everything. The sketches, the poems I wrote about you. Radio silence. Guilt clawed deeper. I'd fractured the reeds, the unbreakable trio. But in Dawson's arms, that guilt warred with a fierce protectiveness. The kind that whispered this was worth the ruin. We rebuilt in fragments. Mornings at the Elliott Bay Book Company, him sketching passersby while I sipped black coffee. Evenings cooking in my tiny kitchen, arguing over playlists. His indie folk versus my classic rock, laughter punctuating the healing. Yet the shadow loomed. Mid-October, Mason called. Coffee, neutral ground. Tomorrow. The diner in Fremont was all vinyl booths and pie under glass. The kind of place where secrets simmered with the grease. Mason slid into the seat across from me. Gaunt, unshaven. A far cry from the larger-than-life brother I'd known. "I sold the cabin," he started, no preamble. "Needed the cash. And distance." I nodded, throat tight. "I'm sorry." He waved it off, eyes stormy. "Don't." Dawson's text. It gutted me. Not because of you two, though yeah, that stung like hell. But because I missed it. All of it. The signs he was struggling. The way he looked at you like you hung the moon. A pause, fork spearing a piece of cherry pie he didn't eat. I was so busy playing protector, I forgot to just be his brother. Relief cracked through me, tentative. "He's good. Healing. But he misses you." Mason's jaw worked. "I miss him too. And you, asshole. But this? It's gonna take work." We parted with a hug. Awkward, bone-crushing, the first bridge mended. Dawson cried when I told him, burying his face in my neck, whispers of thank you blending with sobs. November brought frost to the city, leaves carpeting the paths in Goldgate Park. No, Discovery Park, where we walked that crisp Sunday, hands clasped against the wind. Mason met us there, tentative steps across the sand. The reunion was quiet. Dawson launching into his arms, Mason holding tight, tears carving tracks down both faces. I hung back, the outsider no more, watching as forgiveness wove its fragile thread. That winter, as snow dusted the sound, we forged ahead. Dawson enrolled in art classes at Cornish College, his bold strokes filling canvases with our story. Lakeside dawns, tangled limbs in firelight. Mason started therapy, unpacking the weight of legacy. He even crashed our holiday dinners, toasting to new chapters with a beer in hand. Me? I learned vulnerability wasn't a weakness but a compass, pointing true. One spring evening, as cherry blossoms rained petals on the university bridge, I dropped to one knee on the lakeshore, our shore now, rented cottage in lieu of the sold cabin. "Dawson Reed, you've changed everything. Marry me?" His yes was a laugh, a kiss, a promise etched in the waves. We weren't flawless. Arguments flared over late nights, old insecurities nipping at heels, but in the quiet we found grace. Mason walked him down the aisle that July, under a Seattle sky miraculously clear, his grin wide as the lake. "Told you you'd be fine watching the kid," he whispered as we exchanged vows. And as Dawson slid the ring on my finger, eyes shining with that same storm I'd glimpsed that first night, I knew. Some summers don't end. They rewrite your heart. Forever.